have over 20 years worth of journals, and even through my addictions and living out of my car, for whatever reason, I still always made sure that I held on to those journals. And it starts with a dear God. I always wrote to God. It was dear God because I didn't really know how to pray other than write it out. And I was just, I was in a budget suites motel. I was a senior in high school. I hadn't even graduated yet, and I was addicted to methamphetamines. And I'm just writing, dear God, like, I hate my life, I hate my dad, I hate this school. And so what I did was went through all 20 years of journals and pulled out all the areas where God was there, even though I felt like he had abandoned me. And I was able to see how everything came full circle many times in many situations. It's titled The Purpose of Abundance because I learned a whole different meaning to abundance. I've realized that when I was able to look back at my journals and see times, I even have letters from when I was in juvie that I wrote my parents. And so looking back and seeing what I wrote in those letters, it was astonishing to me because I always dreamt of being a news anchor. I I definitely did not dream of being a person that goes into prisons to help people. And I said in the letters to my parents that I felt like these girls in here have potential, and one day I feel like I could come back and help people. Why I wrote that, I don't know. And I don't remember ever praying to God in there. I was writing to my parents that I was reading scripture, and I don't remember that at all. All I remember is feeling very sorry for myself and ashamed, and I just hated it. I hated it so much. And so looking back at that made me really realize that our purpose here on earth is to change and to become better, and the only way we change or become better is through adversity. So I've just really learned to be content in adversity and stay calm, because when I look back at all those journal entries, I had really, really scary and bad things happening, and it all turned out okay, and it resulted in me becoming a better person. I feel like I have a gift to be vulnerable, to help other people feel seen without them having to feel vulnerable, so they can listen to my story and process things without it feeling so revealing, if that makes sense. My dad was my hero. He was like my best friend, and I really looked up to him, and he was actually pretty religious and strict. He was a never do drugs type of guy, never smoke a cigarette type of guy. And I was across the street at a neighbor's house, and this particular neighbor had already dropped out of high school, so he was a little older, and he was what you would call one of the bad boys. And he said, "Hey, you know your dad smokes, right?" And I was like, "Smokes? My dad would never smoke cigarettes. He calls those things cancer sticks." And he was like, "No, he smokes." And I said, "Weed? My dad would never smoke weed." And he was like, "No, meth." I said, "Meth? What's that?" Like, I didn't know what that was. I was only 15, I think. I might have been 6. I was 16, I believe. He said it makes you stay productive for a very long time, and makes you have a hard time to sleep, makes you lose a lot of weight really fast because you don't have an appetite. And all of these things sounded pretty good to me. So I was like, well, that's a lot of pros, you know? And I was like, but my dad wouldn't do illegal drugs. And he was like, "Cheri, it's 11 o'clock at night, and your dad is mowing the lawn, and it's raining. Something's wrong with your dad. He's high." And I just set out on a mission to find it, and I tried it. I became addicted, and I became my dad's drug dealer. There's a lot of trauma that comes with that, because obviously I didn't have a lot because I was so young. So when I say I lost everything, I hit my rock bottom. Like, okay, I got kicked off the cheerleading team, kicked off the softball team, kicked off the news desk. Um, lived out of my car, got evicted from I did have my own apartment in high school and was already running my own business. I was an addict, so I wasn't making real money. Where I was making money was in my entrepreneurial ventures, and I've just always been really entrepreneurial. I had a photography business and I was doing everyone's senior pictures. And I just went through so much and so much pain and hurt. So there's a lot of trauma when your protector and your hero turns into somebody that, we press charges against each other. Like he'd charge me for breaking and entering whenever I'd break his window to get into his house because he was out of town, and I charged him for stealing money from me. We both always ended up dropping the charges, but that should just give an idea. My parents were married for 20 years. We were that family, just a nice looking family in a nice neighborhood. And we went from that to calling the cops on each other and getting arrested. I do a lot of work in prisons, and we have a staffing agency for second chances. So we help people coming out of prison find meaningful employment. We've placed 3,000 people, so as you can imagine, I've had one-on-one conversations with thousands of people about their upbringing, where they're at, their trauma, everything. And the reason why I started a staffing agency for second chances, I was already a public speaker. I had got clean from meth, I had started businesses, I was a public speaker and an entrepreneur. But speaking in front of a group of people in prison felt like I was at home. Even though that sounds horrible because it's like, wow, you feel at home in prison. But I do, because when I'm talking about these stories, they're nodding their head or crying or laughing. There's some jokes that I say in front of an HR audience and nobody laughs. And I'm like, am I not funny or do they not get it? And it's they don't get it. They literally don't get it because they don't understand. They didn't live that life. And so I talk to people often, and my story isn't, I know a lot of people say it's so crazy, but because of the people that I work with and the people I've talked to, I don't feel that my story is that crazy. The crazy part about it is we went from an all-American girl next door family to that. As I looked back and I read through my journals, I saw that God was talking to me, and I was hearing him because I was writing down, like, I could look back in 2001 and see that I said, "Dear God, I feel like you're telling me to XYZ. I'm not sure if that's you or not, but I don't know," and him and haw, and then I forget about it and move on, and years go by, and when I looked back at that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I still ultimately ended up doing that. It was his will, but I drug my feet. And so my encouragement to readers is just that they write to God so they can just start, not only, even if you don't hear God, the ability to go back and read where you were at and how you were thinking will really, I feel like there's no way you won't see miracles unfold. I had a really hard time being in a relationship, a safe, healthy relationship. One, the relationships I were in, starting with my dad, were very chaotic and dramatic. And my nervous system got used to that. And boyfriends that I had were very, like, even though it was a hurtful thing, when I got cheated on or like abused, it was still, my nervous system was like, ooh, a surprise, ooh, a surprise. Like, it was still like just playing a slot machine, and it was just constant, like, chitter chatter. Looking back in my journals, I can see that I was able to focus on somebody else's behavior and be mad at them or be resentful and not look at my own. So it was easier for me to be in those toxic relationships because I could blame my problems on that toxic relationship. So being in a relationship with the guy that I'm currently married to now, I'd say even for the definitely for the whole first year, like I really struggled, and I was open about it to him and told him like, I want to be with you. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I want to be with you, but I don't feel good. And I get it now. I didn't feel good because it was unfamiliar. My nervous system, I felt it just didn't feel right. And it was too good to be true. And I was afraid of that rug being pulled out from underneath me like it had before. And because of being in I wasn't in early recovery, so I just married him a few months ago. So I feel like still in your first 10 years of recovery, if you did drugs and alcohol your entire life, you're still kind of new. So for me, what was new, I had never done before because I was single for 10 years. I had never been in a relationship sober. And so I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made me feel. And so I was confusing that with having no chemistry and feeling like he was too predictable and not exciting. And I remember he bought a season pass to Six Flags so we could once a month go get on a roller coaster so I could get that woo. And when I looked back in my journal, I had a mentor tell me she's in recovery, and she said, "Cheri, you just trust God that He'll reveal to you at the right time that he's the guy that you're going to marry or you're not." And I couldn't stand that because I wanted to know right now, today, by end of business day, do I break up with this guy forever or do I marry him? And that was every day for me. I wanted to know by end of business day. And I just really didn't understand what she was saying with that. But I did come to the acknowledgement that I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to not be with him. So I'm not going to break up with him, and I'm just going to take it one day at a time. Because I didn't want to lose him, but I also didn't know how to keep him. And so one day when I was getting ready to write this book and going through all of those journals, I had already said yes to marrying him too, because again, it was kind of like how I started my relationship with God. Like I didn't really like God, but I didn't know how to do life without him. So that's kind of how it was with even my fiance. Like I'm like, I was scared to walk down that aisle. I felt like, is God gonna really make me walk down an aisle scared and not feeling sure about this? And again, he was a perfect guy. I wasn't sure because I had so much trauma. And so I didn't want to let another person in my life that close. And I was going through journals. It was maybe 6 months before we got married. And I landed on a journal entry that said, "Dear God, I had a dream that you revealed my husband to me." And I wrote down all the characteristics. And I'm like, dang it, that's Ben. That's insane. God showed me who Ben was going to be. But that wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part was I wrote that journal entry on November 22nd, and that was my upcoming wedding date.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my God.
so that's why I really encourage readers, like, journal, because if you're still unsure of something years later, you might go back in time and find the answer. God might have gave it to you and you weren't listening or not paying attention. Like, go back and see what he was telling you before you even met the person. This was 4 years, like, before I even met him.
I feel like what you're talking about is a very profound, almost like relationship, right? With God, with spirit, with universe, whatever, right? But I think, how do you feel that sometimes it might be represented, that relationship, in kind of modern society?
Really bad. I really sometimes I feel like I'll see somebody do something so horrible and they'll do it in the name of God and like use religion to justify their actions, and I'm like, no, you're being a bad ambassador. And then it makes me feel embarrassed to openly be a Christian because the way all these people are acting, I'm like, I'm not like that. But that's why I was like, I had, before I wrote this book, I didn't believe in myself that I could write. I just didn't think I had it in me. I don't have a formal education. So I actually had a ghostwriter, and I even had an agent. And as I was reading it was not going to be a Christian book. And as I was reading some of this stuff, I was just like, this doesn't sound like me. But I didn't trust myself. So I was like, whatever, if that sells, you go shop it with publishers. And they did. And every single publisher turned it down. And that was it. And I just still really felt that I had a book in me, and I felt like I had to write it and God was going to give me the words. And He did. I wrote it in 3 days. So yeah, I wrote the entire book in 3 days, like typing nonstop. I took naps, so I always hear from God the best in the morning. So I manufactured sleep so I could keep waking up and and hearing from God. But it's that's why I needed to write this book, is because I just meet people where they're at, and I understand that the person who was molested at a church doesn't need to have God jammed down their throat. Like, there was this one girl that I helped, and a lot of Christians wouldn't agree with me on this, but she was in a recovery program, and in recovery programs they say find a higher power. It doesn't matter who that higher power is, you just can't let it be you. And she had been molested by her father, who was a pastor in the church. So she couldn't get past that step, and she was really struggling with the God thing. So I was like, let's name God. Let's name God what you want to name him. And guess what? Let's make it a woman. And so she got through it. She got sober. And fast forward to today, she believes in God, the God I believe in, and came to that because I just feel like today, religious people, it is a form of control and fear when you're pushing your beliefs onto somebody. Instead, I think what's better is to just be a person that will inspire them and help guide them, because Jesus is going to talk to them. God is going to convict their hearts. Like, I'm not God. That's not my job. My job is to share my experience of what God did for me so that you seek God. It's not my job to tell you how God is going to help you. Like, I don't know. I didn't know God was going to tell me who my husband was going to be 4 years before I met him. Like, I didn't know that. Is he going to do that for you? Probably not. Like, I don't know. I can't say. So and there's a lot of Christians that um, are a lot like me too, and they're part of the reason why I was able to find grace. And because when I first became a believer, I was suicidal because I didn't know how to read the Bible, and I didn't have the right people to talk to about it. Later on, when I got mentors who helped me understand the word and learn what the Hebrew word was for different things that really made me feel uncomfortable, then I could understand that God is a graceful God, and that he's not this big mean punishing God that hates me because of the way that I lived. And um yeah, I just really don't like the division in America right now. I know nobody does. um I feel like people on the left have their reasons and justifications, and I feel people on the right do as well. And I think if everyone would just stop talking and do a little bit more listening, the world could change. Don't stay the shame. Like, instead of don't say the same, because shame really kept me from growing in every area of my life. Shame kept me from being in that relationship. I realized as I dug deeper and got counseling, it wasn't even that I didn't think he was enough for me. It was because I didn't think I was enough for him. And I was only able to dig that deep because I wanted to address shame so I could let it go. Because shame is something that only you know happened, and other people don't know about it, but you feel that intense shame on the inside. But what's hard with religion is you know that God knows. And that can be really hard when you feel shameful and you know somebody knows. But I just didn't know that God was so graceful while I was going through everything. And I didn't, I felt like I had to earn things. And I'm glad that I built a beautiful business that helps a lot of people, but I built that business out of trying to like be a martyr or fix other people to avoid fixing myself. I started Cornbread Hustle when I still had a drinking problem. So I was drunk trying to help other people. I got my DWI while I was the CEO of this company. So it took me having to actually walk the walk. It's not even like it took me being on probation because I was on probation so many times. It took me having to really have no substances and look at my trauma and let go of shame. That was the only way out. I tried everything. I stopped smoking meth and then I did cocaine. I stopped doing cocaine. I smoked weed. I stopped smoking weed and then I did alcohol. Like I always had a blankie or a pacifier, you know? So having none of that stuff and going at it completely like raw was really difficult for me. And I avoided medication for a very long time. I learned more about surrender as well. And for me, I think surrender looks different for every person. Some people can surrender easily to something that I couldn't surrender easily to. I could not, I had a very hard time surrendering to medication for my mental health, for depression and anxiety, because I just really felt like I could fix it. I felt like I could figure it out. And I it was really God. Like I looked through journal entry and people like great mentors who I looked up to told me about a medication to get on and it was like he was telling me over and over, it's okay, take this lifesaver. And I don't know why. It was like I don't judge people for wearing eyeglasses. Like I don't tell them to pray harder to make their eyes see better. And I was trying to do that. I was praying harder to try to make my brain get fixed. I feel better now that I took medicine, and it was such a like it almost made me mad because I was like, is that all I had? Like that was my surrender to God. I'm really good at suffering because of shame. So I've put myself in situations where I suffer. I put myself last because I felt like I wasn't that important or I didn't deserve stuff. And so getting on medication just it almost felt like I didn't deserve that. Like I need to face this pain that I caused myself and figure this out. But that was a surrender. So a lot of people don't understand that, you know, the surrenders that we do for God, even though they're very hard. And I cried and lamented and screamed out to God. Like I didn't want to take those pills. Um, it's sometimes surrender, like even though it doesn't feel good, it's what do they say? It's they raise the white flag not to quit, it's to live. And I finally raised the white flag so I could live and nobody likes surrendering. There's so many books on how to surrender to God. But it always, every single person that I talk to, it seems that it always pays off. People who reach out, it's usually because they're sober curious, just like I used to reach out to people who shared their recovery story. I wasn't ready to quit drinking. I just wanted to know how to drink a little more responsibly. Drink like a lady, maybe, which I couldn't. But I was just really, I was curious because I did. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to wake up earlier. I wanted to have a bigger bank account. I wanted all of those things so bad. I remember once I went to a recovery meeting to support somebody else. I really did. I thought I was going to support him. It was an employee that worked for me. And now looking back, he took me because he thought, you need it. But they were talking about how much drinking had made them lose. And I wanted to speak up, I guess, because I thought I was like the cool one in the room and I didn't understand how the program worked or anything. And I was just like, so what's the topic? Stuff that alcohol made you lose? And I was like, well, my name's Cheri and I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm an entrepreneur and I can relate to all of you. I have lost everything. I practically live out of my car. I've given up this, I've given up this, I've given up everything for these people in this company. And one person said to me, "Have you given up alcohol?" And I was like, I had literally wine bottles in my passenger seat. And even though I didn't quit at that moment, it was a seed that was planted. And it was like a ouch, that really got me. And I just I just wanted all the things. I didn't want to do the work to get them. And doing the work for me just looked like facing those emotions. And it's horrible. I couldn't have done it without community. So when people do reach out and ask me questions, and a lot of times they don't follow through or show up to the meeting or anything like that, I'm okay with that because they're going to keep reaching out. Sometimes they do it for years. I can go back on, somebody will reach out sometimes and say, "Hey Cheri, I just want to let you know I'm 1 year sober, thanks for all your posts. Looking back at these messages I sent you, yikes, wow." And, but it's all the time because people will get drunk and they'll message me in the middle of the night through LinkedIn or through Facebook because they're in despair and they want a new life. And I did that. I remember I was drunk in the middle of the night and I reached out to some lady that inspired me, and I was like, "I just want to let you know you inspire me so much and I want to be sober." And the next morning I saw that text and I was like, took a shot. Like, I was just like, "No, I don't want to be sober. I don't know who I was last night." Like, it's not easy. And what I would say to anybody who says to me, like, "How did you stop?" I have, oh, it's not back here. But one of my journals, it was a 5-year journal where it asks you the same question every year. So January 1, what's your New Year's resolution? And it has 5 different lines, so you can write in it every year. And I wrote in there for 5 years straight, "I wish I could drink less." That was my New Year's resolution. I was sober curious for like 5 years before I even decided to get sober. I didn't have, like, even when I got my DWI, as the CEO of a second chance company, I didn't get sober. I was just like, one gets DWIs and it's unfortunate the job that I have, but I just won't tell anybody. And I tried to still figure out how to drink around the breathalyzer. It was just a moment of clarity, and I wrote about it in the book where I just was like, I think I'm done drinking. I think I'm done. And a lot of people, yes, there's people who have a really, like, oh God, like they went to prison for 10 years over a night of drinking and they're done for good. But a lot of the people that are in my close circle, we had a lot of bad things happen, like that would appear to be rock bottoms. But sometimes that decision just, you're finally just sick and tired of being sick and tired. For me, I was tired of trying to control alcohol. It was so hard. Like, I was just tired of counting my drinks, tired of counting other people's drinks, tired of wondering where I'm going to get the next drink, tired of figuring out how I'm going to blow in the breathalyzer without violating probation. I just finally was like, this is too much work. People ask me all the time, like, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? And that the answer usually would be, well, no, because I might not have been, I wouldn't have this friend and I wouldn't have this company. As it relates to things that happened to me, I guess no, I wouldn't change. Like, that's very hard for me because I really love my dad and I wish I wish that didn't happen. But had it, like, I feel like I'm building out his legacy because, like, if it weren't for him stumbling and dealing with his mental illness and not getting help with his trauma, if it weren't for that, these thousands of people wouldn't be helped. So I don't think I'd take away anything that happened to me or anything I suffered with, but what I would go back in time and change and tell the younger version of myself is that hurt people, and that I would ask me, the older version of me would ask the younger version of me why I was being so mean to other people. And if I could take anything back, I would take back anybody that ever felt less than because of me, or anybody who can remember that day in middle school when Cheri, said something mean to them, or I just hate to be the source of anybody's pain ever. And so if I could change that, that's what I would change. But I told you I'm pretty good at suffering, so I can deal with all the stuff that happened to me. I just don't like how I affected other people. So my dad ended up getting quadruple bypass when I was only 1 year sober. Thank God I was sober. I'm the one that noticed something was wrong with him and rushed him to the hospital. And I did get what I prayed for. So looking back at my journals, I did pray that my dad would be sober. I didn't know it would happen like that. I did pray that I spent time with my dad. Like, I missed my dad. Sometimes we'd go a year without talking because we'd be angry or whatever. I became his caretaker. And so, because he was practically on his deathbed, he wasn't out running around like getting meth. And so, I had a lot of like closure, and we had the best relationship. And had he did pass away, and he just wasn't doing what he needed to do and wasn't being healthy. He was still, the shame got him. And I get it. Like, my dad cried a lot. Like, he couldn't stop crying when he was sober or when we were hanging out, because it was really hard for him to see his daughter working a program and working hard at being sober, because he knows how that all went down, and to face that shame as a father, I can't imagine. And so I look at it now that God gave him grace and allowed him to get released from the pain, and because he wasn't going to get it, he wasn't going to be able to quit. And I just I look back and I feel like God answered my prayers, because I feel like he should have died. Like, it was right place, right time. I happened to be with him. He got the quadruple bypass. He lived for maybe another year and a half, but maybe 2 years. I don't remember, but I just feel like God gave me the grace for that. And then the other thing is, when I was 1 year sober, I still had all the consequences from my drinking. So just because you get sober, that's the other thing I would tell somebody newly in recovery. Just because you get sober doesn't mean that your life gets better. So my car was repoed. I had no money. It was just terrible, but I was sober. And so, had my dad died at that time, I wouldn't have had the resources. But a couple of years later, my company, because of my sobriety, had done, I think my company was doing 5 million a year. And so I had the resources finally. And when my dad died, I flew his body to West Virginia, where his family is, buried him in the mountains next to his dad. I spent way too much on the funeral and all that, because grieving does that, I guess. Like, back, I'm like, why did I spend 3,000 extra dollars on that? Because it had a blue bird on it. Whatever. I became the caregiver of his mom when he passed away, because his mom lived with him, and she has some special needs. So um, it's just like God knew I couldn't have handled it at 1 year sober, and he gave me what I wanted. He gave me what I prayed for. And the other thing, that's a big reason I was really afraid of God, and I didn't like the man that I served. Like, I really didn't like God, but I served him because it all always worked out. I just felt like it was always painful. The night before my dad died, I was complaining to a mentor about him, because I was tired of him looking homeless and embarrassing me. And she said, just pray that God takes the burden. Just pray, picture him. I want you to visualize him like just in a balloon floating up to God, so God can just hold him, so you don't have to deal with him. He's not your problem. You're his daughter. Like, he's not your responsibility. Just take it easy. And my dad had asked me that night, we got in a fight that morning over breakfast, and then he said, I got some calzones. You want to come over and eat some calzones? And I was like, no, Dad, I don't. Because I just didn't feel like, I was mad at him. And he said, no calzone for Cheri. I was like, he was just weird like that. And the next morning he died. So that was really hard for me because God answered my prayer, but I didn't want it to be answered like that. I prayed that God take away my dad's addiction and take away his pain and take the burden from me, but I didn't mean kill him. And so that was something that, but I still continued to serve God because I felt like instead of focusing on, oh wow, God, you thanks for answering my prayer, I look back at how he answered the other prayers and gave me more time with my dad and allowed me to have those sober conversations. Like for the first time in my life, my adult life, me and my dad were both sober at the same time. And I get to hold on to those memories. And I believe that God gave him grace by taking him, and God gave me grace by giving me time.